It's time to go through the papers at 8:35, once again with Dawn Neeson and Nigel Nelson. Morning, you two. We're on the 8 o'clock hour. I'm just getting so confused today. Telegraph, Nigel, to begin with.
Indeed, and this is Penny Mordaunt, who's obviously now way behind Rishi Sunak as far as being the next Prime Minister goes. She says she won't back out, but it's one of her allies, the MP Heather Wheeler, and she's saying that she thinks that the making 100 signatures necessary to get on the ballot paper was far too many, and thinks it actually was designed specifically to keep Penny off the ticket, and says that that she's been a victim of sexism because the Tory party didn't want another woman.
Hold on a minute, though. This was agreed by Graham Brady, the 1922 committee. Didn't Helen Wheeler run against Graham Brady about 12 months ago for that job?
Oh, could well have done. Could well have done. I mean, you're better informed than I am on this one. I mean, I think the sexist thing is probably not. I mean, it's just not fair. The reason for the 100 nominations was A, to make sure you didn't have sort of a dozen candidates, but probably, if anything, it was to keep Boris Johnson off the ticket rather than Penny Mordaunt.
Just make it quick, wasn't it?
Well, it also made it quick, but you'd only, the maximum you'd ever get was 3 candidates anyway, so that would have made it much quicker. But I mean, looking at Boris Johnson claimed 100 supporters on Saturday, which we all found particularly dubious. Again, he was claiming the same number last night, so if the Saturday figure was right, they hadn't gone up in 24 hours. Probably he's more around 60, and so wasn't going to be able to run anyway. So that was the reason for having the 100 nominations, to make sure you really, well, the idea really was to get one candidate and row out the party membership.
Penny Mordaunt's written in the Telegraph as well today saying, you know, I know that this requires unity, discipline, competence and honesty. I'm ready to serve, she says. It's very unlikely she's going to get that opportunity. Our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, was sort of laying out the potential path. If she did get to the 100 threshold, do you think she'd actually fight for it?
Oh, I think she might. I mean, I'd rather hope she would do a deal between now and 2 o'clock with Rishi Sunak, and ideally that he would make her Deputy Prime Minister. That would seem to be the best possible deal she could do. If she gets to the 100, she may well go for it, because she would stand a good chance with the party membership.
I just think it's hilarious when we talk about, you know, her possibly pulling out this morning. Well, she's got nothing to pull out of. As she is yet. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, absolutely right, yeah.
So she would need to get, I think she's meant to be on 25 at the moment.
About 25 seems to be the number she's on.
Way to go in
quadruple her
a few
figures.
hours, yeah.
Very odd. Dawn, to the Express, looking at Britain's cancer shame.
Yeah, it's a very downbeat story, but it's in a way it's linked to what we have been talking about all morning with Rishi Sunak and the leadership battle. You know, the priority, as we've discussed in one of the other papers about the immigration issue and the boats crossing Channel. Personally, I think one of the bigger issues for everybody is the NHS and the crisis we are currently facing. This is a very scary report that our 55 days from GP referral to start of treatment for cancer patients. We have one of the worst countries of developed nations for cancer mortality, and that we come 33 out of 41 countries, the worst survival rate in the G7. And this is, you know, it's got worse since 2020. The fact that we are, you know, if you are a cancer patient, you are now waiting 20% longer than you were at the beginning of 2020. I mean, 55 days, you know, from being diagnosed with cancer, it's a long time. I mean, that can be the difference between life and death. So I think for most people watching and listening this morning, this has to be a priority. I mean, where you even start unpacking the current mess that is the NHS, greater brains than me have tried to struggle with that one. But the fact that 55 days, of that stress, that anxiety, and that worry hanging over you, it's just terrifying. And it depends, obviously, on the diagnosis and what stage you're at, but it could be the difference between life and death. So it's a very worrying report, but it's a necessary report to take note of, I think. And let's hope Rishi, if it is Rishi, is going to tackle this issue as soon as he can.
Yeah.
Let's look in the mail, shall we, Nigel? And a real achievement of one woman, something to celebrate.
Yay.
First female soldier passes the Army's demanding course. It's utterly gruelling.
Yeah, well, it sounds absolutely awful. I wouldn't even try. But this is Addie Carter, who's 21 from Hereford, and she's the first woman soldier to be able to complete this course. Just to show how sort of difficult the whole thing was, that there were 98 candidates when they started, and only 59 out of those were successful. So you can see how difficult that was. She's actually a medic rather than a combat soldier, but obviously we're moving further and further into women going in the front line, as they do in Israel. I mean, there you've got women go straight into national service immediately after school. Last time I was there on a job, I went to the Ministry of Defence there. It was rather like going to St Trinian's. There were lots of sort of schoolgirls running around in uniform and stuff like that, but they serve in the armed forces and it seems to work really well.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of women getting into the armed forces, but I mean, getting through this PARAS test is the airborne.
You're going to elite. The great thing here is that this is an elite regiment.
Oh,
so it's the fact that she's managed to actually make an elite regiment, and the next stage for her is to start doing a bit of parachuting.
I love the fact it says grueling para test is no match. Well, it will have been a match for her, as it's a match for everyone who goes through.
And there were no concessions made.
Oh no,
she did exactly the same test.
Well, they've got to be. They've all got to be on a par.
Of course they have. I love that story. Fair play to her.
We were talking to Emily Thornbury earlier on, as you know, and you've got a story about White Van Man Dawn in the Times.
I've seen this link there. See what you did. And I picked this story because it's basically you'd like this.
Can I just reflect on just for a second?
Go on.
I know this is very self-indulgent, but when Emily Thornbury got booted out because she made those horrible comments about White Van Man, and then Ed Miliband was interviewed about it, I remember you saying, when I think of a white van, when I see a white van, all I think is respect. And I just thought, how do you think you pull that off as a line? I mean, honestly, he was hopeless, wasn't he?
Yeah, yes, that's right.
Frankly.
And
anyway, back to your
There's
story.
A lot of hopeless. Yes. I'm not hopeless. You're not.
No, you're not.
Hopeless.
No,
No,
you're brilliant.
You. Well, just in case. Right, okay, so yeah, basically, this is a new survey by Mercedes-Benz, and they have discovered that 43% of van drivers are now women. Now, the phrase white van man was actually coined in 1997, so it's been around for a long time.
But like, was it part of the Mondeo man type thing?
I think it was, yeah, maybe even predating that. I mean, it feels like a long time ago. But I mean, you had this image of builders, all right, darling, in the morning, you know, with their Emily Thornbury sort of like England flags, etc.
You love a bit of that, I bet you do.
Oh, I love a bit of that, Stephen, I really do.
And seriously, do you find it offensive?
What?
When you know, if you've got the all right, darling.
No, morning, darling, yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
but I've always loved it. It's nothing. Rose is pulling your face. Sorry.
It more depends on context. I remember as a young teenager getting sort of, you know, people shouting at you outside of their van or from their scaffolding and finding it really horrible.
If you're younger, of course, if you're young,
I think that culture is not helpful.
No, but I mean,
Did you find it scary or just
totally.
just annoying?
If I was by myself and lots of people, a van went past and there was lots of people, or if more than that, actually, it was a building site and you walk past and you suddenly were the centre of attention on the pavement and everybody's looking at you.
How many people are cheering at you?
No, I really think other people will be able to empathise with being in this situation, and it's kind of irrelevant what you're wearing. You might just be suddenly the subject of attention, and it's more as a teenage girl acutely embarrassing, not necessarily. It's just not what you want on your journey to school.
I think obviously there's a generation thing here. I mean, certainly if you're a young girl, certainly if you're wearing school uniform. But I mean, a cheery good morning, darling, I don't find sexually offensive in any way, type or form. But this is destroying all the cliches of a white van man stroke woman stroke person. As I said, 51% of the female white van drivers read broadsheets rather than tabloid, because that was the image, wasn't it? Red top tabloid on the dashboard, feet up, etc., etc. 25% don't eat red meat, or don't eat meat, full stop, and 85% voted in the last general election. Possibly not for Lemony Thornberry, but I mean, so it's just changing the image of the white van thing. It's
I suppose.
But
which isn't a bad thing, but you know, it's mind you, they can start wolf whistling at the hot fellas who walk past.
I have to confess, I have done that once. Sorry. Yeah. To do that.
No, to be honest, I was in. No, this sounds really up my own. But I got whistled at by some people when I was in Spain.
Ooh, did you enjoy it?
It was bloody great, actually.
Oh.
It was two old ladies in a car. two old ladies in a car. Oh, guapo.
This is one hell of an admission.
And it was, but you know, I loved it.
Oh.
I loved it. It was just like, oh.
Did they have their guide dogs with them?
Yes, they did. Yes. They were being fair enough. Thanks very much. I'm appealing to a lady of a certain age, over 90 probably.
I'm here.
If you've been watching the programme this morning, you'll know that BT staff members are on strike today, including 999 call handlers. But Nigel, today, ambulance staff begin voting whether they should go on strike action as well.
Yeah, it's just more bad news for the NHS one way or another, isn't it? And these are GMB members. What they've been offered is 4%, and it's just not enough. I mean, I tend to agree with that. We're inflation now of over 10%, and the idea of offering these kind of paltry amounts just doesn't cut it. So 15,000 of them will ballot about whether or not they can walk out. Obviously, they won't all walk out. There'll be some kind of emergency cover. It may be some sort of different form of industrial action. But we've now got virtually across the entire health service, with midwife, nurses, NHS workers, all talking about industrial action. And again, I think that as Dawn was just saying, that the new Prime Minister, which we now settled on is going to be Rishi Sunak, really has to get a grip on this and deal with it. But I do think the pay awards at the moment really are particularly mean.
Right. Well, look, on that note, we have to leave it. Dawn, Nigel, thank you both very much.
Did you do my pet story?
No, you didn't, but do you know what? We did it yesterday morning.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, so
get you then.
I was going to miss it out anyway.
Whatever.
Frankly. Should have been watching yesterday morning.
Bothered.
Rebellion in the ranks.
Oh, get off, you two. Honestly, you've had your time. You've had your time. Thank you both very much indeed.